Depolama alanının %84 kadarı kullanılıyor. Depolama alanınız biterse dosya oluşturamaz, düzenleyemez ve yükleyemezsiniz. 3 ay boyunca 49 lira 99 kuruş yerine 11 lira 99 kuruş ödeyerek 100 gigabayt depolama alanını ailenizle paylaşın. There was a moment when you sat on the edge of your bed with the room dark, your phone face down, your chest tight, and no sentence left inside you except, Ya Allah, I am tired. You did not announce it. You did not have the strength to explain it. You may have wiped your face before anyone walked in, answered a message as if nothing was wrong, prayed with a voice so low that even you could barely hear it. But Allah heard the part of you that did not become words. He saw the hours when you were not dramatic, not loud, not asking people to feel sorry for you, just trying not to break in a way that would damage your faith. That is the part of your story many people missed. They saw you functioning, so they assumed you were fine. They saw you still showing up, so they thought the weight was light. They saw you stay quiet, so they imagined there was nothing to say. But your silence was not emptiness. Sometimes it was Sabr wearing ordinary clothes. Sometimes it was tawakkul in the middle of exhaustion. Sometimes it was the last thread of faith in your hand, and you held it even when your fingers were trembling. The victory that is unfolding now may not arrive like a scene people can applaud. It may begin as something quieter. You wake up and notice that the same fear does not own you the way it used to. You hear the same criticism and feel it pass through you without destroying your whole day. You make dua, and for the first time in a long time, it does not feel like you are speaking into a wall. Your heart begins to understand that Allah did not need your pain to be public in order for it to be counted. He did not need witnesses, screenshots, explanations, or proof. Nothing was wasted, because nothing was hidden from Him. The tears you swallowed, the anger you restrained, the prayers you made while half asleep, the times you nearly gave up but still washed for prayer anyway, all of it was seen with perfect knowledge. And now, slowly, not because you forced the world to change, but because Allah changes hearts, circumstances, and understanding by His wisdom, the suffering that once felt like a locked room is beginning to reveal that it was never outside His mercy. The hardest part was not only what happened to you, it was how long you had to carry it without knowing what it meant. A trial becomes heavier when it stretches beyond the point where your own mind expected relief. At first you tell yourself, I will be patient for a week. Then it becomes a month, then a season. Then you stop counting because counting hurts. You watch other people move forward, laugh easily, receive answers quickly, while your dua feels delayed and your heart feels suspended between hope and exhaustion. In that space, Shaitan does not always attack with obvious disbelief. Sometimes he whispers through comparison. He makes you stare at someone else's door and forget that Allah is not late with yours. He makes you interpret delay as rejection, silence as abandonment, hardship as proof that you have been forgotten. But delay is not always denial. Sometimes it is protection from a door that looked beautiful but would have taken your heart away from Allah. Sometimes it is preparation, because the thing you wanted required a version of you that did not exist yet. Sometimes the delay was not about the gift at all. It was about removing the fear, bitterness, dependency, and desperation that would have turned the gift into another test. You may have prayed for an opening, but Allah first gave you discipline. You asked for relief, and He taught you how to stand without collapsing every time people misunderstood you. You asked for peace, and He made you notice which habits were stealing it. That is not a small victory. A person can receive what they wanted and still be restless, suspicious, angry, spiritually asleep. Another person can still be waiting, yet become calmer, sharper, more humble, more aware of Allah. The second person is already being changed by mercy, even before the outside world recognizes it. When your suffering lasts longer than your explanation, it can feel like you are losing. But look closely at what survived inside you. Your prayer survived. Your shame before Allah survived. Your desire to be clean in your intentions survived. Even when you were weak, you did not want to become cruel. Even when you were disappointed, you kept returning. That return, again and again, was not a minor detail. It was the evidence that Allah was still holding you when you thought you were barely holding yourself. There were days when the test was not the big event, but the small moment after it. The message you wanted to send, but did not. The argument you could have won by exposing someone. But you chose to leave it with Allah. The accusation you could have answered with a harsh truth, but something inside you said, do not let gain make you unjust. That restraint cost you more than people know. It is easy for others to praise Sabr when they are not the ones swallowing words that burn. It is easy to speak about trust when their nights are not interrupted by racing thoughts, when their chest does not tighten at a name, a place, a memory, a deadline. But Allah saw the private battle behind your calm face. He saw when you walked away from provocation, not because you were weak, but because you feared losing yourself. He saw when you apologized, even though your ego wanted to punish. He saw when you gave someone the benefit of the doubt, then went home and cried because being soft had become exhausting. And he also saw when you failed, when you snapped, when you fell into worry again, when your prayer felt empty. His seeing is not like human watching. People observe and judge quickly. Allah knows the wound, the history, the pressure, the intention, the effort, and the moment of return. That is why your victory cannot be measured only by who clapped for you or who finally admitted they were wrong. Sometimes your victory is that you did not become the version of yourself your pain tried to create. Sometimes it is that the same situation that once made you panic now makes you pause, breathe, make wudu, and choose a cleaner response. If this part of the message reaches a place you have been carrying quietly, you may like the video as a calm acknowledgement. Not for noise, but as a small mark that you recognize what Allah helped you survive. Because many people want relief, but fewer are willing to be refined before relief arrives. And refinement is rarely glamorous. It looks like deleting the long paragraph before sending it. It looks like praying 2 rak'ahs instead of rehearsing revenge in your mind. It looks like saying, Allah knows, and meaning it enough to stop chasing every person's approval. That kind of victory is hidden at first, but it changes the direction of a life. Do not mistake this message as saying every hardship proves you are better than other people, or that every person who hurt you is an enemy sent to destroy you. That kind of thinking can poison the soul while pretending to be spiritual insight. Some people misunderstood you because they were limited, not evil. Some left because they were not capable, not because they were plotting. Some doors closed because you were being redirected, and some closed because your own choices needed correction. Real basira, real inner sight from Allah, does not make you paranoid. It makes you more honest. It helps you say, this hurt me, without turning your wound into a throne. It helps you admit, I was wrong here, without drowning in shame. The chosen servant, in the healthiest sense, is not the one who walks around feeling superior. It is the one who becomes more accountable after pain, not less. If a trial makes you cruel, obsessed, arrogant, or constantly suspicious, then there is still work to do inside it. Allah's guidance brings clarity, not chaos. It may expose what was harmful, but it does not command you to live in hatred. It may teach you distance, but not arrogance. It may give you strength, but not the right to humiliate others. There is a difference between protection and pride. Protection says, I will not keep placing my heart where it is repeatedly harmed. Pride says, everyone who cannot love me properly is beneath me. One is wisdom. The other is a new wound, disguised as confidence. Maybe your victory is unfolding through that difference. You used to confuse forgiveness with returning to the same damage. Now you can forgive and still keep a boundary. You used to think silence meant defeat. Now you understand that some replies would only drag your heart into mud. You used to think tawakkul meant doing nothing. Now you take the necessary step, send the application, make the call, attend the appointment, have the difficult conversation, and then leave the result with Allah instead of worshipping the outcome. This is not passivity. This is discipline with trust. It is the heart learning to move without panic. And when the heart stops panicking, it begins to see what was always hidden beneath the noise. Think about the season when even simple tasks felt heavy. You would open your eyes before Fajr or after a night of broken sleep, already tired before the day began. The sink had dishes, the messages were unanswered, the work was waiting, and the problem you prayed about yesterday was still there. Yet, somehow, you stood up. Maybe not with energy, maybe not with joy, but with enough surrender to take the next step. You made wudu with water that felt too cold. You prayed with thoughts scattered everywhere. You whispered the same dua you had repeated for months, and part of you wondered whether you sounded foolish for still asking. But that is where something deep was being built. Not in the moments when your faith felt sweet and effortless, but in the moments when obedience had no emotional reward attached to it. Anyone can speak beautifully about Allah when life is opening in every direction. But the servant who still turns to Allah while confused, embarrassed, delayed and tired is being trained in a different kind of sincerity. No audience sees that training. No one praises you for not giving up at 3 o'clock in the morning. No one knows how many times you stared at the ceiling trying to stop your mind from imagining the worst. But Allah knew. And because He knew, your private endurance was not meaningless. It was shaping your nervous system, your priorities, your reactions, your ability to trust without controlling everything. Over time, you may notice that relief does not only come as a changed circumstance. Sometimes it comes as a changed capacity. The same workload is there, but you no longer feel crushed by it. The same family tension exists, but you are not desperate to fix everyone's perception of you. The same uncertainty remains, but you can eat, sleep, pray, and breathe again. That is not a small mercy. When a heart has lived under pressure for too long, peace itself feels like a miracle. And when Allah gives peace, He is giving a victory that no one can steal by misunderstanding it. People can question your path, but they cannot enter the place where Allah has settled your heart after a storm. There is a kind of victory that arrives disguised as emotional sobriety. You do not feel the need to announce that you healed. You do not need to prove you are strong. You simply stop feeding the old fire. Someone says the same thing that used to trigger you, and you notice the first spark rise in your chest, but this time it does not become a wildfire. You pause. You remember Allah. You answer only what needs to be answered, or you do not answer at all. Later, you sit alone and realize something has changed. The wound is not fully gone, but it no longer commands you. That is a serious opening. It means Allah has given you distance between feeling and action. In that distance, character is born. Before, pain would speak through you immediately. Now you can witness your own pain without obeying every instruction it gives. This is how suffering becomes purification instead of bitterness. It teaches you to separate truth from impulse. It teaches you that not every emotion is a command, not every fear is a warning, not every delay is a punishment, and not every opportunity is a blessing. You begin to ask better questions. Instead of, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this revealing in me? Instead of, how do I make them understand? You ask, what does Allah require from me right now? Those questions change the way you move. A person who is desperate to be seen by people may betray themselves for approval. A person who trusts that Allah has already seen them can act with more dignity. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop begging the wrong places to validate your pain. And then something unexpected happens. You become easier to guide. A calm heart can receive direction that a frantic heart keeps missing. You notice the wise advice you once ignored. You recognize the pattern you kept excusing. You see that a door you called rejection was actually saving you from becoming dependent on someone who could not carry the trust. This is Basira in everyday form. It is not a mystical performance. It is clarity, arriving at the exact place where confusion used to rule you. And when clarity enters, even quietly, the whole path begins to change. Still, there is an exception that must be spoken with care. Not every pain should be endured silently, and not every hardship asks you to stay where you are being harmed. Sabr is not the same as allowing abuse to continue. Tawakkul is not refusing help. Dua does not cancel the need for wise action, therapy, counsel, medical support, lawful means, or a safe boundary. There are people who suffered longer than they needed to because they thought patience meant never speaking. But the prophets themselves acted, migrated, asked, planned, grieved, and sought support. Your faith is not proven by pretending you are not wounded. Sometimes the victory Allah unfolds begins when you finally tell the truth to someone trustworthy. It begins when you stop calling self-neglect humility. It begins when you admit, I cannot carry this alone. And instead of collapsing into shame, you take one clean step toward help. That too can be obedience. That too can be mercy. There is a difference between complaining against Allah and bringing your brokenness to Allah while using the means He allowed. You can cry and still trust. You can need people and still rely on Allah. You can be strong and still say, this is too much for me without support. And think of the person who keeps smiling at family gatherings while their heart is anxious, then finally schedules the appointment they delayed for months. Think of the one who has been praying for guidance and then receives it through a calm conversation, a legal option, a mentor's advice, a sudden realization after istikhara, or the courage to leave a harmful pattern. Victory may look less like a dramatic rescue and more like the first honest decision you make without self-betrayal. Later, when you have a quiet moment, answer this in the comments with one specific sentence. What hardship changed the way you make dua? Not the whole story, not an explanation for strangers, just the lesson your heart learned while it was being stretched. Because sometimes seeing one another's sincere lessons reminds us that Allah's mercy reaches people in rooms we will never enter, through battles we will never fully know. When the Quran tells us that Allah knows, it is not a decorative idea meant to soften pain without changing anything. It is the foundation beneath the believer's endurance. Human beings need evidence, timelines, screenshots, witnesses, and summaries. Allah needs none of that. He knows the exact weight of the sentence that broke your heart. He knows how many times you reread it. He knows the moment you decided not to respond because you feared saying something unjust. He knows the night you felt abandoned and still turned your face toward Him. He knows the private guilt you carried, the old regret that kept returning, the fear that maybe you had ruined your future. And He knows the good you did while wounded, the smile you gave someone when you had no comfort left for yourself, the charity you gave quietly, though you were unsure about your own provision, the prayer you protected, even when your concentration was weak. Nothing is lost in His record. But His knowing does not mean life will unfold according to your preferred script. That is where many hearts become confused. They think, if Allah saw me suffer, then He must give me exactly what I asked for, exactly when I asked for it. But Allah's mercy is wiser than our first request. Sometimes He gives what you ask to eat. Sometimes He removes the desire because it was tied to a wound, not to your true good. Sometimes He delays until receiving it will no longer destroy your humility. Sometimes He replaces it with something quieter, cleaner, safer for your soul. Victory then is not forcing Allah's decree to match your imagination. Victory is reaching a state where your heart can say, with tears if necessary, I trust what you know more than what I can see. That sentence is not easy. It may take years to mean it. It may come after anger, bargaining, confusion, and many nights of returning. But when it becomes real, it frees you from the prison of needing every question answered before you obey. You stop treating uncertainty as an enemy. You begin to walk with a lamp that only shows the next step, and somehow, by Allah's permission, the next step becomes enough. Now, look at what is unfolding without rushing to label it. Maybe the people around you have not changed much, but your relationship with their opinions has changed. Maybe the provision you needed did not come in a dramatic flood, but enough arrived at the right time to keep you standing, and you recognized it as protected risk rather than coincidence. Maybe the door you cried over stayed closed, but another path opened that required more maturity, eh? And now you can see why the earlier version of you would have mishandled it. Maybe your victory is a restored appetite after months of anxiety, a sincere prayer after spiritual numbness, a clean boundary after years of over-explaining, a calm decision after panic used to lead you, a morning where your heart does not immediately reach for fear. These are not small things. They are signs of a life being repaired from the inside. Some forms of relief are so quiet that only the person who suffered can recognize them. Others may say nothing major happened. But you know what it means to sleep without replaying everything. You know what it means to say, Alhamdulillah, and not feel like you are forcing it through a closed throat. You know what it means to think about the future without dread pressing on your chest. Let this hope remain humble. Do not turn it into a claim that you are untouchable, or that no more trials will come, or that Allah now owes you a public display. The believer's path is not a straight line from pain to applause. It is a lifelong movement between tests and mercy, fear and hope, effort and surrender. But something has shifted when you no longer interpret every difficulty as abandonment. Something has opened when you can see that Allah was not absent from the valley. He was teaching you how to walk through it without worshipping the valley, without building a home inside grief, without letting the darkness name you. The unfolding victory is not random because your survival was not random. The same Lord who saw you in the hidden place is capable of guiding you in the open one. So, when you sense relief beginning, receive it with humility, not suspicion. Some people become so used to hardship that peace feels unsafe. They wait for the next blow, the next disappointment, the next person to leave, the next door to close. Their body has learned survival so deeply that ease feels like a test they do not know how to pass. But ease also requires faith. Healing also requires tawakkul. When Allah allows the heart to breathe again, do not keep punishing yourself by living as if mercy cannot reach you. Let yourself notice the calm. Let yourself thank Him for the small opening before demanding the full picture. Let yourself become responsible with the clarity you asked for. If He showed you a harmful pattern, do not return to it just because loneliness knocks. If He gave you discipline, do not trade it for the old chaos. If He softened your heart after bitterness nearly took root, protect that softness with prayer, good company, and honest self-accounting. The victory unfolding now is not merely that something outside you may improve, it is that you are being trusted with a different way of being, less reactive, less desperate, less controlled by the eyes of people, more careful with your tongue, more aware of your intentions, more willing to act without arrogance and wait without despair. This is the kind of triumph that can survive even if life remains imperfect. Because a person whose heart is anchored in Allah is not fragile in the same way anymore. They still hurt, but they do not collapse into every hurt. They still hope, but they do not make an idol of the outcome. They still wait, but waiting no longer means being empty. Allah saw your suffering in full, including the parts you could not explain without crying. And perhaps the clearest sign of His mercy is not that every difficulty vanished at once, but that you are still here, still turning back, still able to whisper His name with a heart that has been broken and somehow made more awake.